What is up, everybody? This is Chad from NFT Pirates. Unfortunately, I'm not in my office today. I'm on the road traveling, and I had these great interactions with one of the biggest whales on the Veve app, one of the mentors for me. And so I was like, you know what? I can't, miss out on this opportunity. I got to talk to Danny Boy LIAC. He's given me a lot of advice in the past, and I was like, I need to have him on. He did a great, video recently on the money transfer license as well. So we kind of want to dive into it and give you guys all the details today. So thanks so much for coming on, my man. Really appreciate you coming.
Mate, of course. And you told me you're out there for your honeymoon. So if you need any tips there, I can help you as well.
I'm, I'm just trying to survive the year, man. Whatever wife wants, I'm just trying to make it happen.
Yeah, man. Look, you're doing great stuff. Honestly, you really are an important part of the community. It's fantastic.
I appreciate that, man. It's so important to have people like yourself on to really kind of just share their perspective because, I keep talking about the same things about grails, et cetera, but I think, especially being a whale like yourself and I think I messaged you in January or February. Do you remember that? And I was like, hey, man, I was like, is this a good time to sell? And you're like, oh, well, selling periods only happen for so long. So just remember that, right? That was really good advice.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's markets 101. It's not going to keep going up forever. It's going to set back. I mean, the selling periods in Veve, at that time, there was the sort of the long bull run, but there was also other, very short, sharp jumps, where things will happen maybe more specific to a certain NFT or not. But yeah, there's times to buy and times to sell. The discipline I think in Veve is gem stacking, and I really suck at that because I like buying. But that's hard. And I think gem stacking is the key if you ask me.
I agree with that, man. If only people sold everything in February and then are rebuying now or next month, right? Like imagine the amount
Yeah.
of money they're making, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I shredded that market at that time, got caught out for it a lot. But, mate, in all honesty, if I had to just stack those diamonds rather than reinvesting a lot because people don't see the buying, they only see the selling, I'd be a lot further ahead than where I am now. And, that discipline I'm working on.
That's smart, man. I think a lot of people get scared because they see how, like, if you don't have your money into an actual NFT, if that NFT takes off overnight, then maybe you never have a re-entry. And I think that's where a lot of the fear comes from not stacking gems.
100%. And look, when it really comes down to it, if you take a step back and think about it, look, if you come from crypto and you're all about crypto, then, it's always boom or bust. But really, investment's more of a slower thing. And, your returns aren't 100x. They're like, if you get 5 or 10 or 20%, that's a great annual return. Now, if you're leaving your gems dormant, for what could have been, if we look at February to June, 4 months, if you had left your gems dormant, you're worried about percentage return, that's nothing compared to the buying power you would have of those gems right now. Percentage wise, you're really buying stuff for as low as, in some places, 1 in 10. That means you can stack 10 items for the price of what you could have bought in February for one. Big returns if you can time it properly.
Yeah.
Me, I'm not going to profess to be on top of it because I love these things, and that's the addictive part of people's personalities as well. Is you want to own them. It's not always about, trying to beat the system or get great returns, but yeah, wanting to own as opposed to like, look, I'll get that down the track. That's the hard thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But you make some great points there. And I think the hard part too is like, people are almost incentivized to flip because without the master collector program, without, all these incentives coming in, people are kind of like, well, listen, if I can take 20K, go in and buy a bunch of Vaders at, $800 a pop, flip them for the 2K, now I've doubled my gem stack. And it just makes almost like that whole cycle perpetual where somebody, the next drop happens and then you take the 40K and you make 80. And it's like, well, wait a second, what's the point of being a holder here if you're pretty calculated and know how to time markets, right?
Yeah, totally. And look, the thing with MCP, you have to consider that what it's going to get you is an early entry into some drops,
Mhm.
right? And some of those early entries are going to be very competitive. And I mean, I guess the long game is that you're hoping that it may, even though they've sort of inferred it may not, but it may give you some sort of preferential situation. If Veve does get to the Veveverse situation and there's land, you would hope that there'd be some connection between longevity and support of the company and access to that. And that's the sort of be all and end all of what you can get out of it. Beyond like a, you know, a gold medal or something like that, really, if you're in it to collect and achieve those, you know, get those achievements of being recognized as picking up those items and holding onto those items, that's great. That's the collector that really Veve's after. If you
Right.
want to flip things, I really wouldn't worry that much about MCP, other than it allowing you early access to some of those drops. And look, really, you'd only use it on something like a Vader, and then everybody's going to use it on Vader.
Right. Right. And that's kind of the issue, right? Is like right now we're kind of in this, we have some people that are collectors, some people that are collectors and investors, some people that are flippers, and it's just like the market hasn't made up its mind because, you know, the system isn't really there to guide people. And you know,
Right.
one thing that I thought you did really well was a whole kind of money transfer license breakdown on your previous video. And if you haven't subscribed to Danny Boy's channel, go do it now because it's fantastic. And he gives such, you know, insightful information and really unique too. You're like, you know, challenging concepts that a lot of you know, not a lot of YouTubers and influencers have even considered yet. So maybe like, you know, it would be helpful if you can kind of maybe give like a synopsis of what that video entailed, Danny.
Yeah, sure. And look, I'm trying not to sort of be too brutal in my opinions of, you know, why people do things, but I think we have to always consider people's motives as to why they say something or don't say something or imply something. Look, in my respect, I'm just really trying to bring awareness to some pretty scary obligations that people might have in, you know, Veve NFT ownership. We like these things because they're cool, right? And, you know, there's a lot of dork in a lot of us, you know. We love this stuff, you know. Star Wars stuff is unreal. I love it, right? But there is a tax law that applies to that, particularly, definitely in Australia, definitely in the US. I'm sure Canada's the same. UK, a lot of the, you know, modern world regimes, there are consequences to owning these things. And I think people just need to stop and think about that from two perspectives, not to be scared of it, but just aware of it. And, you know, things that people might think have no consequences really might. And, you know, I know there's a lot of people thinking they can get an advantage to buying off-market gems or off-market NFTs. The fact is, as in life, none of that stuff comes without risk. And the thing is, if you're in a country like the US, where you're required to identify not only the purchase price and the sale price, but also the purchase date and sale date of your NFTs, then that's regulated and that's controlled. You've only got two parts to think of it from that end is, what does the government already know about me? Like, what is Veve having to send to the government? Because Veve is a financial market. It's not a boot swap. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, exactly. Like in Australia, we've got data matching. That means government's already going to know what you've done. And people can go to the Veve website and download their account. I think it's veve.me or whatever it is. You can go actually down there, which is a great feature. And you can download the spreadsheet that sort of says to you what would happen if the government saw this, right? Because things like transfers in or sale of items at capital gains, non-market value, people have to realize there's a tax consequence to that. And if you've bought some gems on the side and you've sold a Murmikono to that person for 10,000, then it looks like to the government that you bought that Murmikono, or Toby, I believe is one of the ones, the weapons rack, whatever it is, right? It looks like you've bought that for $20 and you've sold it for 5,000. Now, you made a paid an ETH or something along the side in a sort of a side market deal to acquire those gems below the dollar value that Veve is required to hold it at. But that's untraceable, that part of it. So on your account, it just looks like you bought something for this price and you've got a monster windfall. Now, if you're in America and want to be fully compliant with your tax because you're, running a business or you're employed and you have to put your tax in every year, then the fact is that has to be added to your income this year. And I don't think people are aware of that. You're like, oh, no, I use that to buy gems. I'm like, mate, don't tell me. Tell the IRS. I don't care what you did. Do you know what I mean? But have a think about how the IRS is going to look at that. And you're like, oh, I don't need to put that down. Well, you do. And there are forms required for you to put that in to deal with that. I mean, you have to list it individually. So I think a lot of what people say and the confusion comes from, maybe people with a vested interest in keeping that confusion up because they are the people who are selling these gems or, involved in these deals. I don't think it's fair for innocent people to buy an NFT and, think they're saving $20 and end up with a $4,000 bill.
Right. And
that's
not
what people
even
are thinking about. 100%. And honestly, I think the large majority of the Veve community would have no idea. And that video is just about saying, guys, just be thoughtful of this and go speak to your accountant. Because if you don't know, go find out.
Right. Man, Danny, this is really interesting. And I think, it comes back to like clarity, right? Like a lot of these people, came in through the app, so they didn't even really understand the whole perspective about selling and these being taxable events. So they're just, joining in and having a great old time, and they see an ROI on their NFT. But here's a question back to you, and this is what some people have said to me is, well, because they're in gems, it's not actually like a taxable crypto or fiat. So therefore, it's almost like monopoly money within a system, and until you cash it out, only at that point would it be taxable. Curious to what you think about that.
Yeah, and look, I'm certainly not a tax expert. Like I said, I refer people back to their accountants. Yeah. But this is another one of these sort of look over here, keep buying these things whilst you don't know. What I believe is there's an event horizon coming up, right? It has two parts. It's the MTL, because I do believe people are right saying that, look, whilst you can't actually convert into fiat, there's really no tax obligations. And I completely concur. But I mean, if you're buying stuff in Veve, that's because you believe the MTL is going to come in. Right. So you have to act as if it's going to come in, or go and shove your head in the sand. Do you know what I mean? Right. Now, if you believe the MTL is going to come in, then you have to understand that gem is worth $1. Whether you like it or not, that's what it's set up for. That's what the governments are going to work their tax responsibilities from, right? So the fact is, if the reporting takes a little bit longer, then it just takes a little bit longer. But the governments are going to say to everybody at some point in time, hey, this is convertible to $1. We treat it as $1. We've had to issue, licenses to this company saying that it is worth $1. So that's what all the tax obligations are based off. They're not based off what Dave wants to sell you the gems for. That's got nothing to do with it. Right. You know what I mean? So I do believe that there is a period that we're in right now where these things aren't automatically reportable to the IRS or whatever your local tax body is. But it's coming. The threshold is approaching, and there's two parts. There's the MTL and there's your KYC. Now, if you don't want a KYC, that's fine. But if you don't KYC, everything's locked there in your account. Do you know what I mean? I know. So, yeah. But if you're dealing with people who have no intention of KYCing, then who do you think's going to get left with the hot potato? Right. Do you know what I mean? Do you think they're going to care? And, honestly, people should go back, and if they're buying stuff off market, go back and say to whoever they're dealing with, can I get a receipt for that? Because I'm going to need to explain to my government that I've purchased that using that ETH transfer and see how
Mm,
you go.
right. It's a
Good luck with
really
that.
it's an important conversation, isn't it? Right? It's a conversation that hasn't been really brought to the surface. There's been a lot of speculation and a lot of ha ha ha, but it's kind of like you're right. Like once we start with, the MTL and all your personal information is there, and the
Yeah.
government's going, well, wait a second here. There's $100,000 imbalance in your
Yeah.
transaction history. Can you discuss that with me? And so,
That's right.
right. And so here's my question, because the hard part is that the government only has so many resources as well. And I mean, maybe it depends on the different types, but I'm just thinking like, for them to investigate somebody for, let's say, a $10,000 discrepancy, potentially that's going to happen, especially as automated tools and algorithms get more into place. But you know, is this something that people should start like thinking about now? Because even if it doesn't come to 2024, 2025, it's on the blockchain too, right? Like it's not as if,
It's look, it's there. It's
yeah,
always going to be there. It's a
right,
database. And if you think they need a lot of resources to put this data together, they don't.
yeah,
You know, in the space of a week, I could get every single person on the Veve database. I could run one rule to identify non-market value transactions. I could run another rule to look at every single transfer, and then grab those accounts, put them into some sort of collated Excel, and I'd know what your position is without even needing to do any work. I'm
right,
like, there you go. There's the input criteria. That's how much tax you owe. You know, you've actually had a capital gains of 85,000. You're like, no, I haven't. You know, I'm behind on this and I'm behind on this. Like, mate, it doesn't matter what you think you are. That's where you are. You know,
right.
you got that Todd or that partners, for zero. Oh no! I paid 2 ETH for that. Where?
I see. Yeah, you got it. Right. And so here's the other thing too, is that, potentially the delay has less to do with the actual MTL itself and more to do with understanding how overwhelming, these transactions might be for Vivi to really understand, and the amount of people that, like, good and bad actors that have gone in to purchase an NFT that might not even be aware of those implications, right? And I think like once they start doing an audit, there might be so many things that turn up that it almost be overwhelming, right?
Totally. And I mean, Vivi've got to be
Yeah.
careful of sort of blowback in that regards, but
Yeah.
people have got to take responsibility for what they do. You can't
Mhm.
buy something and then say, "Oh, I didn't know." Well, it's not somebody else's fault. It's your fault. If you want to go down to a market and buy the Todd physical statue and hold on to that, and you make $200 selling it to somebody else, those people don't have any records of that sale. Nobody's going to question it. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And you've sold a collectible or something that's distinguished as a collectible, and you've made a profit, and it's an undeclared capital gains. You don't know who the other party is because they gave you $200 or you gave it to a store or whatever. There's no reporting requirements from any of that. But Vivi is a financial market, right? It has access to fiat, and it also has a conversion from a crypto. That's the area that they live in. They do not live in that, undeclared area. Disney
Mhm.
doesn't live in that dark area, and if you want to go buy, a scribble for 4 ETH and try to turn that into 8 ETH, hey, you can get away with that through a lot of those markets, and nobody's going to know what you've done, right? That's that area. And I mean, a lot of people talk about crypto and crypto people and the importance of crypto people. I think Vivi's at stage one. And, a lot of the crypto people were the early adopters, and well done to them, but I don't think they're an important part of the long-term plan, right? This is a general market that's aimed at the world, not at just one section of it like crypto. And I'm not saying they're going to turn their back on crypto, but they're not going to cater to crypto. They're not going to say, "Oh, we want this anonymous."
Mhm.
You're
Mhm.
not going to get anonymity here, right? This is
Right.
why I've sort of said, on some of the people's accounts where they've got 6 and 7 accounts, they might need to stop and consider, each account individually and then try to work out some strategies or tactics to move stuff into their cleanest account, which would be, you know, it could be something as simple as running the risk of putting stuff onto the market and then trying to grab that back out, you know, from account A to account B and dumping 2.5% on some stuff, or, you know, 8.5% on some stuff. That may be something they can consider. Or they can just KYC both of those accounts, connect them to their name, and then see how they go.
Right.
But they're not going to be able to KYC and get the cash out. There's no situation that exists where you're going to have cash in your hand from your Veve activity and the government not know who you are, unless you've done some sort of really dodgy back deal, paying somebody in some foreign area to effectively try to take your capital gains.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and it's a really sophisticated process for somebody that can avoid that backlog, right? And like actually and I think, you know, and I think the issue that I want to reiterate is that like a lot of people that are on this app have literally no idea. Like you have young people that are flipping all day for like 3-4 gems a pop, not understanding
Exactly.
what that could mean, right? And so we went back on this, and I know like this is going to be a big interview, and I feel like a lot of people are going to comment, but I remember back in the day, I was thinking that because they're gems, it's again monopoly money, and until it's out, it's not. But now that we're on IMX, right? And GoChain was more speculative, like it was kind of like there, but it wasn't there, and so the digital collectible aspect could have been more kind of, you know, hidden, so to speak. But on IMX, like you can go back and see the history, like we talked about, of everything.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a whole different component too.
It is totally. And
Yeah.
here's the thing, like in the early stages of crypto, there was a lot of dark areas where people were able to hide. Okay. So what the government's, obviously, anytime there's money transfer, the government's very concerned. So what the governments did was said, you know what, if you want to operate an exchange in our country, you play by our rules, whether you like it or not. So people, when they wanted to run through those exchanges, got identified. Right? That's where they capture them, because they go into the exchanges and say, give us all the transactions that relates to that party.
Right.
And that's what's going to happen here, because Veve is a financial market.
Right.
Now, I don't know whether, you know, the Canadian government is on top of everything, or whether Veve itself has been forced to automatically send this stuff in, but it will happen. I mean, every single part of tax law is retrospective, and it's not going to happen in 7 years. It's going to happen in a year or two. Like probably 80% of all KYC accounts will be connected to their government in some way.
Right. Right. And we're already seeing that now in Canada. Like there's only so many exchanges that you can pull out or put in from. So it's not like there's just millions of exchanges and it's like it's a very secure process. You know, they have to know everything about you. So
Exactly.
right? Like if you put $4,000 in and you take out 50 grand, they're gonna be like, okay, where'd the 46,000 come from? Let's check it out.
100%.
Yeah.
In Australia, not only do they have to KYC you in respect of identify who you are as a legal tax-paying entity, they actually are required to have you prove source of funds. And that's how bad it is here. And like, I don't think a lot of regulations around the world are as stringent as Australia. Like it's pretty full on here, but they actually put the responsibility onto the exchange. Like they're doing the listing on Ascendex now with the OMI. Now, Ascendex in Australia, if you put money into an Ascendex account, you know, once you get over a certain point, say like $20,000, they're not allowed to authorize any more deposits until you can verify where you're getting your money from. Like, can you imagine that? Like, think about that 10 years ago, for companies have to say, hey, you tell us, you go and do the hard work for us, and you find out where they're getting the money from. Like, it's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy.
People should ignore
it. Yeah. The problem is, it's like, it's the Wild West right now, and people are having fun. They're taking out their cash and they're going, oh, let's go do something with it. and nobody's thinking about this, right? Nobody's thinking about the
No.
$21,000 tax receipt they're going to get in, and you have 6 months to
That's
pay,
right.
right? I
Like, just
know.
imagine, right? Just imagine you bought 3 Tods, for,
Great stuff.
3 ETH on a side deal, right? You put those 3 Tods into your account, and then you've sold them this year when they were at their peak at 10,000. Now you're sitting there, you've reinvested those 30,000 gems into other stuff that have just come crashing down, right? Now you're looking, oh my God, I've wasted my gems here and I have this and I have that. What you're forgetting is that those capital gains have been realized. As far as the government's concerned, you've made $30,000. If you're in in the USA, you have to put that onto your tax this year, right? You have to add $30,000 worth of income and then actually find the money for that tax. But they don't care what else you've done. And the only way, and this happens a lot in financial markets, and it will eventually happen in VV, and that is there'll be periods at the end and the start of each prospective tax year where people will sell items for that have gone down to try to tax manage. And that's what they do with stocks. You got 3 stock portfolios, one of it's killed it, one of it's gone down. You flush that one that's gone down right before the end of the tax year, and you offset the profits from the first one, and then you rebuy that loss, hoping that it goes up again.
Right.
That'll happen on VV. And this is what we have to do. We have to start acting as if these are, taxable parts, because they are.
Right. So those Tods that you see every now and then, people are making mistakes. People are like, you won't believe it. A partner's went for $1,000. Like this more coordinated than you think. Imagine these people.
Well, the good news is, the people, the tragics, and they've listed. Look, I've done it once, and I have to say, I listed it. I think it was an Edo. It was definitely part of the Ultraman series. It's supposed to be 1,500. I listed it for 15 decimal point, not 60 or whatever it was. So I took an absolute pounding on that one. The good news is, down the track, that's a big capital loss. So some of these people who have gone through that pain will have a little bit of, comeback, or a little bit of rejoice that they'll be able to offset that against other capital gains.
Man, like you said, at least that's one benefit of this whole thing, right?
That is.
Yeah, but like the other thing too is like you get all these kids as well. Like I know there's whales, I know there's big investors in VV, but there's also like young kids that, for instance, got a Todd at $80. It went to 10 grand. They sold it, right? They don't know what's going on. Maybe they did an offline transaction and then they cashed out through an exchange, and now they owe 3 grand and they have no idea, right? And so like this is what I'm trying to say. Like this could be, and I think this is the whole reason why not only is so much education needed for VV users and crypto users as a whole, but also why there's such delay, I think, on a lot of these bigger things that we're all waiting for, is that because it's just so much complexity.
Absolutely. And look, it's not VV's responsibility to provide tax advice, but the stuff that they give the governments, I don't think that's necessarily a trade secret. Do you know what I mean? So it wouldn't hurt down the track for them to sort of say to everybody, guys, this is what's required from, they've got major markets like, Canada, UK, Europe, some of the Asian countries are coming along. It wouldn't hurt for them to eventually sort of not give a heads up, but, well, I guess it is sort of like a heads up and say, guys, this is what we're required to give your government. You know what I mean? Like you need to go research your own tax obligations, but this is what we're required. And there might be a point where they're like, guys, when we get this license, we have to provide our whole database for every Australian to the ATO.
Right.
And that's what will happen in Australia.
Right.
And if that does happen, and you've been sitting there for 2 years listening to people saying, oh, you don't have to pay tax on this stuff and it doesn't matter, mate, you're in a world of pain.
Right.
And this is where people have to consider, hey, what does my account look like before I KYC it?
Yeah, I hear you. Man, so here I'm gonna get a little technical because I'm just curious. Like obviously you've done a lot of thinking on this, and like I said, that if you haven't watched that video by Danny Boy, go check it out because he goes over this topic in a really concise, organized manner. But like, let's say like I buy these gems, right? And I have this huge run up, but like when you look, so this is the other argument. A lot of people are looking at like the blockchain, and they're saying that it's not necessarily a representation of the NFT itself, but a transaction record of the NFT on Veve, in a sense. It's almost like, and so I'm just trying to kind of come back to the whole gem idea, like the monopoly money idea.
Yeah,
That
look,
that
this is what I'd be very
yeah,
careful of. And
yeah.
look, let's not spend too much time on the tax
I
side.
know,
So I
I
do actually,
apologize.
I feel like I get burdened with it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a freaking holy moly. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not people's moral compass, and nor do I want to be.
Yeah,
But yeah, the thing with it is, as an underlying general, watch out for these. Hey, look over here, look over here. Let me confuse everything because I want you to still keep doing this sort of stuff. There's going to be a vested interest in people trying to get confused,
hmm,
right? Because they want you to keep buying this shit from them and they want to keep making money on the side.
yeah,
So, that video, it's not one that people are going to share out that are doing these things. Do you know what I mean? So I asked people who sort of got friends in there who are worried about the tax, maybe send that one out. But in that regard, and sort of specifically to that point, digital collectibles are considered an asset,
right,
right? Now, I don't understand the nuances of NFT sort of wordsmanship to get into answering that point. But I think if you look at it just basically, number one tax principle is that you must do your best effort. If you're going to determine that that's not a digital collectible and the IRS has a specific area of collectibles and a specific description of digital collectibles, I would say ask them and
right,
ask the IRS. Don't bloody ask Dave that you're buying gems from, for
yeah.
Christ's sake. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Because they're like Vivi's the collecting expert. Like they're not responsible for teaching us how taxes work, just like you wouldn't expect, USDT to tell you about taxes or whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
don't go into the stock market in America or Canada or Australia and say, "Hey, tell me how to do everything," and tell me how I should do my taxes.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. If the fact is, as I said, it's a very advanced here. If you buy a stock on the Australian stock market, you have a HIN, which is like a holders index number. Now, in Veve, we all have a connection to eventually KYC accounts. That's our sort of HIN. That's our identifier. Now, they already know at the end of the year what my capital gains position is, right? And they have a separate treatment of both the capital gains and the dividend for those stocks. And they already know. They already know every single cent that I earn in my bank accounts because the banks have already given them that information. So when I say data matching, what that actually means is they pre-create your tax return from all their known information. And if you don't match that, they go, hang about, we need to have a chat.
Right.
That's the problem.
Right. And the issue is too, is if you're not prepared within a short time period, then you could actually be facing criminal charges. Like, and I mean, that's the extreme, but like, I think that's
That
how it
is the
works,
extreme, yeah. That's where you get into deliberate stuff.
Yeah.
And this is where people who are doing these things, they'll never be able to KYC those accounts.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was having a conversation. I'm not in the chat rooms much, but I was in one the other day talking and having a conversation. And one of the persons was a very frequent gem dealer, and I was trying to say to him, "Hey, you're probably never going to be able to KYC your account." He's like, "Oh, I've got this and that in there." I'm like, well, that's fine, but you also have this huge list of transactions that the government's going to be very interested in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
tread carefully.
Man, well, Danny, I feel like we definitely nailed that topic, and again, I appreciate you kind of bringing this to the forefront because I think a lot of people did have their reservations and their speculations, but a lot of they just didn't want to bring up the topic, or maybe they didn't know enough about the topic. And again, I know that you're more knowledgeable than the average person, but like you said, you're not like the tax wizard either, and there's still a
No.
lot of other things that people need to consider. And so I guess
Yeah.
like switching gears a little bit, I have this contention, and I've said it a few times, that essentially like we're seeing it right now. We have a lot of saturation in terms of like collectibles, and it's obviously only going to get more and more saturated. And then with a lot of these users that are losing ROI are disinterested, and maybe have moved on. And we also had a lot of bots that have been captured. And so like over time, is this just like one big toy store with some of these toys, potentially being worth a lot more than others because of blockchain significance, because of utility, et cetera, metaverse application? Or do you think, some of these prices that we've seen in February and March, could return? You know what I mean? Like, or is this kind of like, is this a different game?
Yeah. Look, I think without doubt, the prices that you saw in January, February will be back. I think you touched on the point of there are items of more importance that's where I guess some of the nous comes into it. And there's two things that's important to you and important to everybody else.
I like
But
the everybody else thing. Yeah,
yeah. The
yeah,
thing is, Veve will always go through this period where you've got two parts. You've got influx of NFTs and influx of money, right? Now, where one goes higher than the other, prices will go, if the NFT count goes up and the money's not coming in, prices will go down. And conversely, the other way, when more money's coming in, but there's not a huge increase in supply, then people are buying what's already there, and they are going to track towards stuff that's firstly important to them, and for people who want to do more investing, important to the market. So there's always going to be these up and down periods. So I think that just people need to relax and get used to them. That's when people sit back and say, oh, look, I know Veve sort of says, oh, it's not really supposed to be. We only got in for this, or it's a collector's app. Look, if it was a collector's app, you wouldn't have a secondary market. They wouldn't care about the secondary market.
right.
The secondary market will eventually be their main source of income. So they, of course, care about it. And, they're going to make sure that they're compliant with keeping that, in existence. Excuse me a second.
Yeah. No, I think this is a great point.
I just realized my laptop wasn't plugged in. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
nice. Yeah, making sure so we don't lose you here.
But the point I was going to make is people shouldn't be stressing about these little ups and downs. And look, if people believe Veve is going to end up where it's sort of forecast, and people say stuff like, "Oh, Veve can be as big as Netflix," and you know what? Maybe it can. But if you believe it's going to walk that path, then you have to realize that what's here now, it's like a very small fraction of what's going to come in. And I think it is MTL is the main catalyst for everybody's in behind the wall. Do you know what I mean? People aren't jumping over the wall right now with their cash saying, oh, take everything, because they're still worried about the MTL, right? Once that MTL gets cleared, then people like us go back to saying to our friends, oh, you got to look at this, got to buy this, there's a good chance that this could go up. That opens up. Then people like celebrities go back to them saying they start putting their NFTs on, their pages, and people will start inquiring and trying to find out what the hell is this Veve. Veve will explode. Like, 100 times. And I know that's a number that crypto people like to hear, 100x. But honestly, we're not at 2.5 million, mate. We're sitting much, much lower than that. I said in one of my videos, I think at best it's 350,000, active, and 50,000 very active. We're a drop in the eventual Veve ocean if you believe in it. Now, if it does follow that path, which I really, really think it will, and hope it does. It has sort of small company becoming big company, things that they have to manage very well. But the fact is, they have the IP, right? They have the stuff that everybody wants. And if those things like the Batman first series, right? If that's it for the next 5 to 10 years, and then as they 100x the amount of people that are in there, I'm not saying that those things will go up by 100x, but I can tell you there's going to be an absolute crap load of people who come in wanting to eventually find out about that series, that, oh, that's the first, and that's the history of this, and that's this. You know, I want that.
Right.
Right?
Right. Brilliant points. It's so nice to see some, positivity in this market sentiment right now. And I totally agree with you. I think the biggest deterrent for me, putting my friends on it and to people that have less crypto knowledge is that, hey, guess what? If you want to cash out your money right now, you got to do a black market deal. You've got to have some shady escrow, or you've got to just send first and, pray to God that you'll get your money back. And it's just totally shady, right?
100%.
Um,
Yeah. And,
yeah.
and when things were moving and everyone's like going, wow, I'm in early. I want to tell my friends about it. When you were in January and, or, if they were getting in sort of October, November, and then all of a sudden the January rush is going through and they're seeing their investments, triple, then they're like, oh, mate, you're the best friend. Let me buy you a drink. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Now they're sitting there saying, what have you done to me? What have you done to me? I can't get my money out. You're sitting there going, oh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. That's not a great, place to be in. And that's where we are now. The catalyst, but however, is sitting right in front of us, right? The catalyst for change is, supposed to be due quarter 2. I know a lot of people are like, in quarter 2, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Well, maybe I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I'm not privy to any Veve information. But the fact is, if the MTL is going to come in the near future, then that catalyst is going to be reached. And I'm telling you, really, hold on. You wait till you see. Because those early celebrities that were in, and, there was a few that people sort of jumped onto and, try to freaking attach themselves to, and they got in there and said, oh, Veve this and Veve that. And you got to remember that those people might have brought in thousands at a time into Veve, and they're now dealing with those same people saying, what have you got me into? You know what I mean? When that's removed and that door's open properly and there's no security concern whatsoever, the first push, there might be a little bit of drain out with, some people trying to rush to the door. And I think Veve will have the smarts to make sure some people don't get out the door. But, once that sort of liquefy now, help me get some cash, once that passes, my God, the first push could be absolutely tremendous and it could keep going for quite a while. And the skill will be holding on to your asset and not missing where it goes, because, if you've held on to something like a Rizzo and you bought that for 4.5K, when it hits 8K, you're sitting there thinking, whoa, I'm going to get out. And I'm not saying you shouldn't get out, because you'll never time the market to the top all the time. And there are macro issues that, people have to consider as well. But, it might be the point where that thing could run. There's only 1,750 of them.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? That could easily run back to the 25K where it was, and it could double past that.
Yeah, man, brilliant. Like, and this is the thing people don't understand. I mean, I know, like, perfect examples like Bitcoin has 21 million of those, and obviously there's way more community understanding, and it's, a lot more worldwide. But like you said, if you're dividing that, by almost a million, going down to 1750. And then at that point, whatever celebrity comes in, like Logan Paul says, hey, guess what? I just bought a Labracorn. All of a sudden, huge community just jumps into Labracorn and that flies. And then they go into another collectible with 500 editions. So yeah, and I mean, and then that goes back to the whole scarcity popularity argument. And I think I've said this a few times, even to you, but like I bought into scarcity early on, thinking that was the way to go. And in terms of liquidity and it was more so popularity that I saw win the day. But what is your take on that with, your history of investing? Do you think that, like, some of these really rare exclusive items, despite necessarily their popularity, can still do tremendously well? Because it's easy for a whale or a celebrity to get in there and say, guess what? You know, despite this not being Vader or Spider-Man, it's a golden Moogly, and this shit's the coolest.
Yeah.
If you don't have it, you're toast.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt that scarcity will eventually play a role.
Yeah.
And it may take time, you know, because you have to have a certain amount of high net worth individuals or, you know, investment pools that come in and say, you know what, once you get really smart money in, you know, like you look at any NFT, it's going to go through a period of maturity. You know, it's going to be who's owning it first. Well, unfortunately, historically, the bots own most of them first, right? And then they sell out to the people who are the flippers. You know, well, you know, 80% flippers and 20% owners. And then, you know, as time goes on, more and more owners enter the platform, and more people want that from more of a longer term perspective. And then you get, you know, you get less liquidity, you get less available stock. There is another point, you know, when it reaches a situation where some market makers may come in and say, you know what, I'm buying those 30 and there's nothing you can do about that. I'm taking that market out. I'm going to buy everything below a certain point, and I'm going to leave, you know, one or two on the market above that point. So you can come up and get them. If you come in below it, we'll just grab it. So yeah, this is where it gets a little bit more sort of sophisticated money, a little bit. This is the top end, you know, and I think what we describe as whales now, they're minions. We're all minions. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I know what you're saying.
there's big pools of money that can come in and just delete all the available stuff and make it very hard to get. And the stuff with historical significance, whether that's historical to Veve or historical to the NFT, I think those ones will be the stronger thing. And that's not rocket science, but, you know, like I've always said, like the stamp set, the mother in the stamp set, the Day of the Dead, that's the first stamp set with the United States Postal Service. It's a government entity. It's an official stamp that has, you know, a hard copy that correlates to it. Now, the stamp collectors in America, I don't even know the number. I'd hate to hazard a guess. Now, they're sort of probably, you know, in the 40 plus age group, you know, majorly, and they're not into this NFT space now. They're not aware of what Veve is, but they could reach a point where they are, and this becomes a common household name sort of thing. And, you know, you're sitting at Christmas and people are giving each other NFTs, you know, through the Veve app. You know, at that, you know, point in time, someone's going to sit there and go, well, what was the first stamp?
Yeah.
What's the lowest one on that first stamp? Now it's sitting at the moment, I think, at about 160 gems. I mean, that's a good risk if you ask me. Do you know what I mean? Because I think there's about 4,000 of them. Like, I'm not trying to pump anything. I am a holder of those, but that's sort of special historical relevance will be more important to like if you've got a more popular stamp that comes onto the app, and I think like that Take Me Out to the Ballpark might be historically a popular stamp, but it's not going to rate as highly as the first NFT that the US Postal Service has done ever. I mean, that can never be replaced. That's it. That's a fixed supply of that particular thing. And that's the sort of thing that the big money may come in and grab a hold of. And then all of a sudden it's not 160, it's 1,600. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you want to buy it, you can buy it, but that's what it costs.
Right. And see, this is the thing that people haven't even seen before is like institutional investing. Like if you thought, like you said, the whales are here, they're little minions compared to what could happen, right?
Totally, mate.
Right. And like, you know, you see it with Bitcoin, right? Like, oh, we bought 100,000 Bitcoin. And you're kind of going, what, you know, Bitcoin was 72,000. What do you mean you bought 100,000 of that, right? Yeah. So I mean, I think, you know, these are fantastic points, man. So I think, you know, that's a big deal. And if people kind of are privy to that now and are thinking about historical significance and foundational significance, you know, and I think about it like you and I, like let's say you and I got tasked to meet with some kind of investment bank for, I don't know, $600 an hour, and they're like, listen, give me your top 7 NFTs on Veve. I mean, we're really going to do our homework and say, okay, which one has the least chance of failing here, like, and go through it
Absolutely.
all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
not, and even though there's hype plays a component, it's not going to be like the main driver when you're talking about
No.
safety, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that sort of money takes a long-term approach. And here's the thing, that money's not coming into the MTLs there because they wouldn't,
Right.
their own internal compliance would not allow that.
Yeah.
It's like no cash out, no cash in. It's that simple.
Right.
And they also won't come in until all of the secondary market is absolutely obliterated because they're not going to buy something for $1 against your 30 cents.
Yeah.
They don't operate like that. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're not going to buy an Apple stock or, what's that guy? God, what's his name? Warren Buffett stock, for 130,000 and have you come and say, well, you only paid 30,000. That doesn't happen. Do you know what I mean? They would come in and they would be talking to, Dave and say, what guarantees can you give us that that's fixed? Because we've heard this or we've heard that. We're not coming in until that's taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So when that does come in, they do take a much longer approach. Like in the stock market, they'll work out what they think a good buy-in price is. The classic one with Buffett's like when he got into Coke and he's like, I know how much money they make, right? I know what I can rely upon. I know this is a completely established brand. So I'm going to value the company at this. I'm going to put our buy-in at 70% of that. And then whatever drops below it, we're just going to pick up. We didn't give a flying crap about the macro and the stock market or you panicking or what happens here or there or an explosion here. They don't give a shit. The fact is they know how much the company's worth. And unless that changes, their buy-in doesn't change. And anytime that drops in, they'll pick it up.
I hear
and
yeah.
Yeah, that's what will happen here eventually if Veve becomes what we think it can become.
Right. And I think we're all bullish to think that it could become that, right? And I mean, because like I keep just talking about it to friends and stuff. I'm like, I don't think people understand what they're sitting on here, and it's hard to understand it because you're
It
like,
is.
okay, like look even the YouTubers now. I mean, a lot of us are amateur. Look at me, like what I'm trying to say. And as much as we love the project, we're here because we believe in the mission. But what kind of professional YouTuber who's making money on investments from like their membership is going to recommend something that has no cash out? So on top of that,
Exactly.
in addition to what you're saying with the money, they're going to then also have an influx of new media and new YouTubers and
Yeah.
whatever that are going to be going like hardcore on this. It's just going to be like a whirlwind.
100%, mate. This
Yeah.
is stage one,
Right.
right? This is just all it is,
Yeah.
They've sort of used analogy, you're inside the store, and that's exactly what you are.
Yeah.
And fair warning to, those sort of influencers that are doing the wrong thing, it's just going to get left behind. Now, they might be able to hold on to a whole big pool of people who, don't understand anything and, want to try and, make a little bit of a sort of a deal here and there. That's going to be left in the past, like anything. The next wave of YouTubers, they haven't even started yet, and they've already got huge pools of followers, and they're just going to wait and they're going to come in. And mate, even myself, I've sort of been, I've been listening to you guys say, "Oh, come on the show," and I didn't really want to for the longest time, and I'm sort of in a way unsure, but I do feel sometimes that there is an opportunity here for influencers who are doing the right thing to sort of come in together and get ready for that stage two. And the thing with that is just take it slow. It doesn't matter if you've only got 500 or 1,000 followers at this point in time, because the big thing's not here yet. And you just want to make sure you're setting that stable foundation, because if you set that stable foundation, you'll ensure future success. If you want to, clickbait and, do dodgy deals and that, then go for it,
Yeah. Well, I know what you're saying though. I mean, it's kind of like, you get a new job and, you can make your money and get out, or you can take the pension and like, advance your career. And this is kind of like the VV's trajectory as well. Is like who's going to be here
Yeah.
for the long run, and instead of worried about, are you going to get that extra subscriber, worry about, what kind of reputation you're creating, and the people that you're just talking with, etc.
100%, mate.
Yeah,
Association, who are you associating with? Reputation is so important eventually because trust will become very, very important. And if you're doing things that, some of these people who have just become aware of tax obligations and that, the first thing they're going to do is go, why didn't you tell me about this? You know what I mean? I've been listening to your freaking show for all this bloody time. You've never mentioned it, but you've stuffed me here. They're gone. That's burnt. They move on. Do you know what I mean? And eventually, I think, as in most things, the cream will rise to the top. And the people who are doing the right thing by the company and by the community will prosper. Lies always travel faster than truth, but you
yeah,
just, if you're working off lies, or, devious methods, you eventually get caught out. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And people leave you because, why would you give your time to people who have no integrity? Why? Why give up part of your day unless they're that entertaining? And don't get me wrong, if they are, then go for it.
yeah. I think the issue that I'm having is like I know a lot of people in this space, and I'm like, I know so many people that have bought gems or have like done deals, and
Yeah.
I'm like, man, like it's just gonna be such a mass reckoning, so to speak, that I feel like
Yeah.
everybody's gonna get their slap on the wrist, and then it's gonna be like, better judgment prevails from here on out forward.
Yeah, and mate, I want to be very clear about this specific point. I'm friends with people who are doing this stuff as well. I try to give them a personal heads up. Look, just be careful. But the fact is, I know people have sort of either bought these gems because they needed to, or because they didn't understand the consequences. And for me, I don't think the people who are doing that are part of the big problem. It's the people who are misleading them or not giving the information that are. It's the people who are running the groups, and facilitating all this sort of stuff. That's where the problem is. It's not in the odd innocent party who's bought some gems on the side. And I think a lot of people might be like, "Oh shit, okay, I understand it now. I'm not going to do that," and that's great. And for me, if we ever do something, I've got some ideas potentially. I'll speak to you about them off the record. But
Yeah.
if everybody should have a chance at redemption. It depends on how big a hole that they've dug. Do you know what I mean? So if you just bought a few gems, that's nothing. We can give you a little baptism. You're clean. On you go. Don't worry about it. Some of the other people who want to keep fighting the bad fight, and keep saying, mixing people up and confusing them around and putting them in blindfolds and spin them. Mate, they're the people that, there's no space for. And, if it came to that point where we would have to consider allowing them some sort of second chance, mate, we'll go Game of Thrones on them. We'll just make them do a walk of shame.
Yeah, yeah,
They're not getting through unscathed on my watch.
yeah. Oh man, it's such an interesting ecosystem because we have the goody two shoes that have no idea about NFTs. We have I would say the majority are collectors that are also investors, and I think Akomi Homies did a good tweet on that recently. Saying what is the demographic here of the people that are here.
Yeah.
But I think it'll just be interesting to see how we move forward as a community, because I feel like there's still gonna be some battles, but we're all still family. But Danny, I know you're a busy guy too, because I know we've been talking here for over an hour, and man, time flies.
Wow, it's gone that long, has it?
Yeah. But is there anything else that you want to say to the community before you take off?
Just like I said, that video on the tax is probably not going to get an easy push out. So probably if you do learn something, do help push that out.
Yeah.
If you've got some time and you're in a place with Amazon, go watch Juvenile Delinquents movie. Check that one out.
Wait.
Mate, other than that, if I was going to say anything, I'd say should have asked me, because I thought, I wonder what he's going to ask me, because we didn't do it like a pre-thing.
Yeah.
I said, mate, you can ask me anything, but if I was to give a little bit of advice to what I think is good at the moment, as we're sitting in there watching Darth move up and down, I think, me personally, what I think's a good buy at the moment is Joe Mad. Right
Right.
now, I'll give you my reasons, and then you can sort of understand some of my thinking towards some of the other stuff.
Of course.
Okay, so he was a cheaper piece in a premiere set, right? So you obviously got the big number Todd, and Todd is a special rule that breaks every other rule, right? That's the one with the 7,500 that everybody wants to get. Then you've got the Rizzo, and that's expensive, and that sort of ran up. That became hard to get. Now, Joe Mad was a popular piece in the most popular set, but he was reachable, right? So everybody grabbed that particular NFT. And if you have a look at that one, even in, I'm not going to say people aren't going to sell below what it's worth, or it's not going to, drop that, but it's just more stable. It's a much more mature NFT, because the people that are holding onto it sort of want to hold onto it. A lot of them might wish that they had the Todd, or but they couldn't afford it, but they had that piece of that set. You know what I mean? So I think that particular one, if you look at it, and things that I sort of look at, which maybe not everybody wants to pay attention to, but things like looking at how long does it take for the item to double from its lowest one, and if you look at the first page, which I think is 10 entries, what is the change in value, and then how many of them are available as a percentage of the total. And like that particular piece, it regularly has under 50, which is under really 1.5% of its total pool, sitting out there trying to test the market. And I don't know, for me, that one ticks a lot of boxes. So that would be my sort of recommendation.
I love that.
But mate, other than that,
that's a good
not a
rec.
lot to say. It's funny, mate, because I thought you might ask me some dodgy questions, so I prepared this. I was gonna use this. I was gonna be like, nah, don't go there. But unfortunately, you kept it all good.
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty clean. I try to, you're nice enough to come and share your time with me and give us all your great insights. So I was like, I gotta watch out for the Kylo Ren lightsaber here.
Yeah. You know what happens.
Wow, it looks good, eh?
Yeah. I got a few of them. We went to Disneyland not that long ago. So, mate, I'm fully stocked. This one was going to be, that's a good question. I'll answer that one.
Yeah. Wow.
Kylo was no. And this one was mind your own effing business.
So the good thing is none of the sabers came out. So I was pretty clean then, right?
It was very clean, mate. I'm very happy. So thank you so much.
Man, thank you for coming on. Like I said, I've been a big fan of yours, since the beginning. And, I'm not even a dolphin. I would consider myself like, just a small fish in this whole game. But it's been fun, and I get to sit with people like you and learn and discuss. And I just think it's so important, like what you said earlier, is for all of us to, continue not only to question things, but to challenge each other, to get this dialogue out there. And like I said before, if you haven't subscribed to Danny Boy, and if you don't follow him on Twitter, go do that now. And I'll make sure as well to have all your stuff in the description below.
Thanks for that, man.
Yeah.
Because mate, I really didn't care whether I got 5 or 10 views, but as I sort of understand a little bit more about how YouTube and that works, I think some of the stuff that I've got ideas for sort of getting people together, I think you need to get to 1,000 subscribers.
Right.
So if we do sort of get to that point, I've got some ideas. Like I said, I'll talk to you about that later. But it really, in principle, it'll just be, getting ready for stage 2, getting people in together who want to get a message out to the community,
right.
that are doing the right thing by the community. And that's going to be like a prerequisite. We get enough solid people and, build the right infrastructure, mate. It'll go, telling you, it'll go really well, because I think the VV community, so many, people are so interested in this stuff. And there's so many different aspects of it we have to address.
Yeah, exactly. and it's so early, it's still so premature, and we're all pioneering it.
Stage
So
one, matey. Stage one.
stage one, yeah, I love that. I'm going to use that
We
now.
haven't even got the shuttle out there yet.
Yeah.
You know, in
Yeah,
Cape
exactly.
Canaveral terms, it's sitting on that massive thing that goes about 0.00 miles per hour as
Right.
it sort of carries out there. You know, we're not even locked in. The astronauts aren't here.
Right.
You know, it'll happen, Bar.
Yeah.
Well, I believe it will. Not financial advice.
Yeah. And like you said, when it happens, it might happen fast too, right? Yeah.
Real fast, man, real fast. You look at some of the great pictures that already exist inside our community,
Yeah.
that people have, you know, used the AR to take some great shots and even done some other artistic work behind it. Mate, you put that in the hands of, you know, somebody with I didn't want to say bloody Kardashian or something like that, but just imagine Kardashian buys one of those Da Vinci Prides.
Done.
Could you imagine that hits, like you said, Logan Paul? Imagine if that hits one of their, you know, YouTubes or whatever they bloody do. Mate, it'll just go,
Right.
You know,
Overnight. Overnight.
Overnight. Yeah. And then once it builds that traction, it's just going to keep rolling from country to country, from place to place, more and more and more. People start talking about it more. You know, we can stop being embarrassed talking to our friends about it, because people are like, they'll be going like, is that what you've been talking about, that Veve? Mate, it won't even need advertising on TV. It will just explode, because, you know, companies like Disney, they've mentioned certain things on their Twitter, but I think they're also holding back. Do you know what I mean? Because they would be inside their boardroom saying, well, we need to wait until the MTL's done, because we don't want to be dealing with this. You know what I mean? So they'll be like, okay, MTL's done. Let's go. Let's push this up. What's that going to take? 2 seconds?
Dude, you know, that's another fucking great point we need to just discuss quickly, because it's like, look at all the brands that BB's partnered with. Coke, Disney, Marvel. Imagine if they all got together in one giant social media campaign and we're just like Veve NFTs. Like overnight, like half the world would learn about it.
Insane. Like the actual potential is
crazy.
Just crazy.
It is crazy.
You know, it's just, the awareness is not there yet. I'm telling you, and it's deliberately been held back, I think, until they've got their house in order, and that's a smart play. Really, they have to get this stuff sorted, because there are issues for it if it doesn't have things put in place properly. So they have to have, you know, infrastructure and protocols that exist before they can take that step forward. But once they're ready, God damn, like if you imagine, like, remember when Netflix did come through and people were like going, like, what do you mean I don't have to go to the video store anymore?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, one of those moments, it'd be like, what? This is unbelievable. All the movies are sitting on my TV.
Right. And so you're saying the same thing here. I don't have to go to the comic book shop. I don't have to go to the toy store. You know, like, even though you might still want to, like, you can still go to Blockbuster, you still buy a DVD, but a lot of people are totally happy having Netflix. So it's like you said, it's the next iteration, especially when we're operating in the metaverse. You know, Apple has those new AR glasses that they're coming out with. Like, it's all going that way.
All going that way. I mean, this is technology, information. This is the area. You know, look, I don't understand Web3, to tell you the truth, properly. But that's where it's all headed. And this stuff, you know, we're getting this stuff which we can take there. Do you know what I mean? Eventually, some of this stuff, if what we think is going to happen happens, some of this stuff is going to be fantastic to own, and we own it. Right. So for other people to eventually want to own it, they have to pay the price. And that's where, you know, you've got to balance up your short-term and your long-term goals. And just hope, mate. Hope it does deliver on its promises, because there's no reason for it not to.
Man, and I guess it's so funny because, you know, always people, when they hear about when we got in, they're always like, you know, I wish I had those opportunities. I'm like, well, the opportunities are now, and they're still here, and they'll likely be here for a while. So, like, you know, now is really the time to look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know, do I really believe in this project? Do I believe in the future? And if you do, then you can make some pretty calculated moves, right?
you know, you sort of got the benefit of seeing what happened when the first bull run did happen. Do you know what I mean? Like if you've almost got like a little bit of a, oh, I've seen that before, you know, and these are the things that moved up, and this is the ones that moved up. Now, when they fall back to where they were, you know, like a year ago,
right.
That's, if you believe in the project, that's a massive opportunity, because you've already seen where it can go in a small bull run. Do you know what I mean? Like they can go a lot further. I mean, a lot further.
Yeah.
You know, like
Wow.
it's unlimited, mate. You look at something like Ultraman, and you know, I don't understand the exact intricacies of any global restrictions. I know they weren't initially a sale in certain countries, but if you know, if Veve ends up in those countries and there's no a sort of geo block on that, some of those pieces are selling for 88 gems right now. But this is their Iron Man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like the one and only. Yeah. And there's, you know,
like,
9,000 editions, and it's like, okay, like let's just think about this here, folks. Like, you know,
let's just think about this for a sec. Yeah. And I think first it's going to be really, really important.
I've said the same,
You know,
especially with data, right? Because we talked about this. Like the problem is if you just have continuous scarcity, then there's no way to actually distinguish between collectibles over time. If you have 1,000 you know, Ultramans, other than knowing what the first is or what the one of one is, how else can you distinguish value? So I think that, right?
mate, absolutely, because
Yeah.
they all become sort of grouped into like a similar sort of thing.
Yeah.
But once you have first or the standout pieces for other reasons, yeah, they're going to be pretty important.
Yeah.
I think so anyhow. And you know, there's a big difference between owning the ultra rare in the current Harley set as opposed to the first one. There's a big difference. They're freaking worlds apart.
Right. And it's crazy because we're already seeing that. Like, even if you just look at like Harley Quinn, like the red, black, and white series is an example. You're on your fourth one now, and you're like, okay, there's the ultra rare, and it's going under retail. And I mean, like, you know, not to say that it's not going to go above, but you can just imagine, you know, amplify that by another 40 sets. Like, you know what I mean? Like, which one's going to hold the value, right?
Yeah. Look,
Yeah.
the young Harley Quinn is one of my favorite pieces.
Yeah.
And look, I will say this, and it's sort of going to date this video, but at the moment, you know, as we're sort of in this squeeze, there's somebody had been trying to sell one for low fives. Now, historically, that's a great buying price, right? I would buy that all day, every day. And I watched as it sort of set down a few times, that same piece, and it had easily a clearance of 1,000 over the second piece. There's another 1,000 for the third piece. So look, if you had that one piece, and I really wanted it because I love that piece, right? But here's the thing, and this is sort of more on my thinking. I don't want to give away too many trade secrets if there are
all
some.
the info, Danny.
But here's my thoughts. You want that piece, it's a great piece, it's way undervalued. However, it's going to cost you 5,100 gems. Right? So if you look at that 5,100 gems and you think, well, I saw that Harley piece go up to like 13, 14, 15, 16,000, right? And that would be a great return. You could 3x your money. And it's a solid piece, and it's going to be in time a very desirable piece. However, right now, there's another potential grail piece, and people may or may not put importance on it, but you know, the Steamboat Willie for me is a huge historical piece.
Oh, fuck yeah.
And everybody's allowed their own interpretation of that. Me, I think that's a big, big piece, right? It has a limited number. Now that piece, I think that peaked above 10,000, right? At the moment, there's some on the app. There was this morning, somebody cleaned it up. I was going to grab some, but somebody cleaned it up. At 780 gems, there was about 5 of them, right? And whoever cleaned that up, congratulations. But if you think about, totally. If you think about Harley Quinn versus that piece, right? You would be better buying 7.5 of those pieces against that one Harley Quinn. Even though you want the Harley Quinn, the fact is, if you hold on to those 7 pieces for probably 6 months, you're going to do a lot better out of those 7 pieces than out of her piece. Even when the market moves up, those pieces have the potential to go back a lot further up as a multiple. So it's just, you have to have the discipline, and I'm working on this discipline. And I think that was my first main success story, because I wanted that piece. I knew it was a good price for it. But I aimed at the Steamboat Willie, because it's a much, strategically, if you take the emotion out of it, it's a much sounder investment. And to stack 7 of those at 780, oh God, you'd have to think that's a good move.
Yeah. How could it not be? Like you said, I mean, you see Steamboat Willie on every Disney show that you watch. It's worldwide.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, right? Somebody said that about Secret Rare Spider-Man, because I was always hyped about, like, oh my God, you can get into these clubs, and there was, a lot of people that were behind it, but it was like, but then Common Spidey went to almost 1,000, if not even over 1,000, when they were $25 a pop, and it's just like what's the downside risk? $4, and the upside risk is 975, and that was just in this mild bull.
100%. And that's a big part of what's going on now. Downside versus the upside, right? As these things squeeze in, it reaches that point where some of the higher value items are squeezing down a lot further. They're coming in closer, from a sort of a multiple. You've got, the secret rare or the ultra rare as compared to the, and I'm talking about collectibles here, not the comics, but as compared to the common, they're squeezing down. So there's not that much financial difference. It could be 100 gems, it could be 200 gems, it could be 300 gems, but historically it's been 3,000. Do you know what I mean? So one can potentially go up, one can potentially go up a lot more. And you don't need Steamboat Willie to run to the January highs to make money on it. You don't need to run anywhere near that,
like if you want to sell it $4,000, you could sell it $4,000,
you would think so. Yeah.
Well, Danny, man, thanks again, dude. I feel like we just, we gave everybody an extra 20 minutes, but I feel like it was needed. And clearly I feel like there's still a shitload to still talk about. But for anybody that doesn't know, it's actually, right now it's 1:20 my time, AM. And it's Danny, it's like, what is it, 3:30 in the afternoon for you or something like that?
Yeah, man, I gotta go pick up the kids from school. I don't want them left on the corner. Go, why aren't you here? I'm like, NFTs, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, they'll prosper from it most likely long term. So yeah. Well, good stuff.
Let's wrap it up then, man. Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much.
There's my son calling me now.
Oh, perfect timing then.
It's all right. I've still got 30 minutes. So
yeah. Okay, good. Well, yeah. Thanks again for coming on. Like I said, we'll have to do this again soon. I'd be really interested to get you and Silicon, a few other the big whales in there, just having a good chat.
100%. Yeah,
that'd be pretty cool, right? Just to see the dynamics there and see what you guys talk about. But please come on again. Again, go subscribe, follow Danny on Twitter, and let's make sure to hook up another date in the next few months to kind of see what the progress has been.
For sure, man. Been a pleasure.
Thanks so much. See you later. Man. Okay, take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.